Bill Scott and lineman TJ Lang.
Hey, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the fifth quarter in Little League. TJ Lang has the night off, so we bring you the Sports Reporters segment of our In the Huddle program. We're joined by Justin Hall, as we are every week, and from the Appleton Post-Crescent sports writer Mike Woods. Right? Oh, thank you. Right at home, and you brought all your family here, so
someone has to.
So the Packers have the bye week off. You watch any football over the weekend?
Itty bitty, a little bit, not a whole lot.
I was I had about the half of the Viking Bear game on, and it was just about putting me to sleep, so I had to get up and go do something. But boy, the Vikings are in trouble, aren't they?
They're in a lot of trouble. However, that said, I think anyone would be mistaken or make a mistake to think they're just going to lie down the rest of the year. I think they'll give the Packers a good game on Sunday. They could beat them, never know. But I laughed today because Fire says, "Well, I hurt my shoulder putting on my shirt," which who doesn't? And then he can play a whole game, and then he's going to get an MRI. And Childress comes out and says, "Nah, just so he'll be fine." So that part of it just doesn't end with those two.
Yeah, they continue to battle back and forth. I was talking with Desmond Bishop today in some media locker room availability, and he basically said that watching the Cowboys-Giants game yesterday is a perfect example of why you don't take teams that are even perceived as bad football teams lightly, because that's what happens.
I think it helps too when the bad football teams are teams you quote unquote don't like. Green Bay, Dallas, we talked about that rivalry last week, and with Minnesota, I mean, nobody's thinking of them as a 3-6 football team heading into this week. It's the Minnesota Vikings. They handed it to the Packers twice last year. Green Bay got the first one, but I'm sure they'd like nothing more than to stick another nail in that Minnesota coffin for the 2010 season.
I must admit, watching the part of the game that I did watch, I didn't really see a Viking. I didn't see them quitting like Dallas quit.
No, absolutely not. After you watch what the Cowboys did yesterday, you got to wonder what was going on in the previous. It's not a Wade Phillips lot. That's on them. But no, I don't. There's too much pride in those guys. They're not going to, especially if it's Green Bay being the rival it is. That at this point, that's possibly a season maker for them. And let's face it, they have 6 losses. But if they win tomorrow and go on a streak, 9-7, that could get it done for them. So there's no reason to expect them to lay down.
I think it's very reminiscent. You go back to the 2007 Packers, they make it to the NFC Championship game, 13-3. They come back the next year and they go 6-10. There's so much, there's not a lot of margin for error in this league that things can go right. Every ball can bounce your way one season, and the next season, nothing can go your way. And that's what Minnesota's like. Last year's team, very reminiscent of the 2007 Packers. Everything went right. I mean, the San Francisco game, the Green Bay games, everything fell in place for them to get to the point where they did. And then the next year, things changed. We could go back through that 6-10 schedule and point to about 5 different games where they either lost in overtime or took the lead in the final 2 minutes, only for the defense or special teams to give it back. And it's all those little things aren't going right for Minnesota, and that's why they're heading in the direction they are.
I think the Packers, for the first 6 or 7 games, could lay a claim to that too.
Yeah, very fortunate.
That they were last year. They got every bounce, every ball rolled their way. They recovered all those fumbles and interceptions and all that kind of stuff. And their giveaway takeaway, they were big time in the plus category. And this year, the ball hasn't necessarily bounced. Part of that's their own doing, and sometimes you got to make your bed and got to sleep in it too. But it just goes to show you it doesn't always bounce your way all the time. Now it's starting to go their way a little bit more, and the record's turning out to be better.
Perfect bounces. James Jones' fumble against the Bears bounced right into the hands of the Bears. Mason Crosby's field goal against Washington. If it's a quarter of an inch the other way, it might bounce through the uprights. Yeah. Those are the little examples, the prime examples just of that.
So what kind of shape do you think the Packers are in right now at 6-3?
Pretty decent shape. Obviously, I think we all understand the next 5 weeks is going to be the telltale sign of what kind of team they have. But their defense, I think, is in pretty good shape. They've I don't know what that says when you have all those injuries and these guys come in and can play well. Either the guys that they lost really aren't that good, or maybe the coaching staff is really doing a great job coaching these guys up. I'm really not sure. But, you know, I think in the end, you know, everyone's pointing to the loss of Finley that could spell a difference eventually, and I think that will. You know, I always just harken back to the days of having Shimura and Keith Jackson and having that tight end, and how that can open up a field, and how can that help you open up an offense, and you know, that's something they're just not going to have. Interestingly enough, you said the very same thing that column in Gannett newspapers today, written by Cliff Crystal, and he talked about that very same thing, and he said when it boils right down to it, injured players are a lot more replaceable than you think they are. But he said Jermichael Finley is the one player out of all of these injuries is the guy that they won't be able to replace or be able to come close to replacing. Everybody else, I mean, you look at, you know, the running back, maybe they haven't replaced him from a yardage standpoint, but they've figured out a different way to skin the cat. And then you take a look at Barnett at linebacker. I mean, now Barnett's supposed to be their big gun linebacker, at least big gun middle linebacker, and have you missed him? You know, I mean, they have stepped right in, and there's nothing against Nick Barnett, but they have stepped right in, and those backups, Desmond Bishop and Brandon Childers, and they've done a fantastic job.
And when you say it like that, I mean, that's why you have to point at this coaching staff. That's why you got to point to Ted Thompson for, I mean, his philosophy, like it, don't like it, want to see him do more, don't want to see, whatever it may be. The reason why he does what he does is for a perfect example like this. So guys like Desmond Bishop in the system 4 years, he can come in. Charlie Peppera, he's been on and off the roster. He's been able to step in. I mean, throw your player in whatever position you want. They've had guys that have been able to come in there, play, and not miss a beat. And yeah, you got to credit the players, but the coaching staff and Ted Thompson has put them in the right place. Dom Capers too, yeah, Dom Capers. And that scheme, everybody's in the right place at the right time. They know what they're doing, and Packers are 6-3 because of it.
We'll talk more Green Bay Packers football here in this bye week. TJ Lang will be back with us here at the fifth quarter in Little Chute again next Monday night, and we'll have a player guest as well. Mike Woods from the Appleton Post-Crescent with us tonight, along with Justin Hull. We'll continue after this on the Woodward Radio Network.
Now back to In the Huddle with Bill Scott and Green Bay offensive lineman TJ Lang.
And we are back here at the fifth quarter. Once again, TJ Lang with the night off. And we're joined by Justin Hall and Mike Woods from the Appleton Post-Crescent. Our program brought to you each and every Monday night by Mole Lake Casino Resort and Conference Center. Now, this is is this the last important game Brett Favre is going to play in his career?
Not if they win.
Pleasure to guess.
If they win, they're still 2 games out of first place in the division, and their schedule lightens up. So if they win, no. If he loses, yes.
It could be, personally, it could be the most important game for him.
I think this is his Super Bowl for this season right now. I mean, if they lose it, they're done.
Yeah.
You know, I would agree with you.
And you have to wonder, you know, he keeps hinting about this injury and that injury, and if things continue to go south for the Vikings, is he just setting us up for, hey, I can't do this anymore, I'm walking away, see ya?
Well, at some point, I mean, Brad Childress is going to hang on to it as much as he and Favre have been, you know, kind of infighting a little bit this whole time for the last 2 years. It's easier to not make it look as bad a year ago because they were winning, you know, so it wasn't a big a deal. Now it kind of stands out a little bit more with these two going at it. But Childress' job is on the line too, and so he's going to play the quarterback that still gives him the best chance to win. And right now he perceives that to be Brett Favre, despite all the little catfighting that these two are doing. But at some point, if you're the Vikings, don't you got to throw Tavares Jackson in there and let him play? I mean, that's one thing. Tavares Jackson, you know, they played him for a while when he was really young, but he's really never been given an opportunity to be thrown in there and just play.
You forget, I mean, what was it, 2007? Didn't they go to the...
You led him to the playoffs.
They led him to the playoffs 2008 when the Packers were 6-10. Minnesota won the division that year with Tavares Jackson, who was in there the first couple of games, and I think he got banged up. They went to Gus Farratt. And I think at the end of the season, they put in Tavares Jackson. He won 3 straight games for them, took them to the playoffs. I know they lost in the first round, but still, has played. He's played okay. I think, like you said, I think Childress is just tied with Favre, so he kind of really has his hands tied behind his back. Have they waited too long to make a move on Childress? I'm starting to question that because, I mean, with 6 weeks left, 5 weeks left in the season, what's good firing your coach and giving a guy 5 games to figure out?
Well, it would be an interim situation anyway, but perhaps, I would have thought that everything that happened and after he let Randy Moss go after giving up a third-round draft pick, that would have been the time, But it kind of, there's not a lot of NFL owners out there that really want to fire a guy in midstream. I mean, the Cowboys they were really desperate to do it, but most teams kind of wait till the end of the year to do it. It's not like baseball where they'll fire you right in the middle and kind of pick up from there.
Yeah, as bad as they are, the 3-6, and everyone thinks they're out of it, but the reality is they're not. So, although if they play like crud this weekend and knowing Ziggy Wilk, what he saw with the Cowboys this past week, maybe says, hey, what we can't do any worse. They might zip them and put in Leslie Frazier and see what they do.
I'll say this: I think they've already got the offensive coordinator that can coordinate the offense, and the defensive coordinator that would become your interim head coach for the rest of the season. I don't know that you would rock the boat too much if you made the move.
Well, I think that's the thing with Frazier. If you look at Dallas, they had to do what they had to do. I mean, Jason Garrett was losing faith. 2 years ago, he was the next big head coach in NFL standards. That's why Jerry Jones paid him head coaching money to stay on as an offensive coordinator. So you had an opportunity to give him the reins, see what he can do, see if he was as good as everyone was saying him and touting him to be, and if he can't handle that after 1 week, I mean, so far so good. Whereas you look at Minnesota, if you give Leslie Frazier, who has been a hot commodity or at least has been interviewing for jobs over the last few years, if you give him 6 weeks, what are you really going to find out in 5 weeks or 6 weeks with that position? So, I mean, Minnesota's, I think they really just got their hands tied. I think they kind of just dug themselves in the hole, and now they're just going to bury themselves in it.
Did you guys watch the Fox pregame show yesterday?
Did not see it.
Did you see Terry Bradshaw or hear about it?
I saw parts of it. I'd like to flip back between the three.
Yeah, he basically did about a 2-minute rant on Jerry Jones as to all the successful organizations are out there that have a general manager and have a head coach that's picked by the general manager, personnel people that do personnel things, and Jerry Jones should not be in the business of being a personnel guy, a general manager. It said if you want to be successful again, the only way it's going to happen is if you get out and hire a general manager. And that I mean, he was absolutely right. He hit it right to a T. I mean, Jerry Jones has wrecked his own franchise.
Absolutely, but he's still delusional because when he was with Jimmy Johnson, he believed that he was the guy actually making the calls on all these picks. So therefore, I did it once, I can do it again type of mentality. It's his, for him, it's his fantasy football team.
I mean, has he wrecked it though? I mean, from 2003 to 2009, nobody in the NFC won more games than the Dallas Cowboys. We're talking about one season here, and I mean, I don't mean to stick up for Dallas. And I look at the segment with Terry Bradshaw. That was the same segment that 4 weeks ago they buried the Green Bay Packers because Ted Thompson didn't trade for Marshawn Lynch and said they basically threw their season away because of it. Look at where they are now.
Well, I think you got to ask yourself though, where are they headed?
It's 1 year. The Packers went from 6 and 10 to 13 and 3.
But it's 1 year that you know of, but it could be the next 3 years, it could be the next 4 years,
It's true. I mean, but if you look at the body of work over the last how many years, and I don't like Jerry Jones, don't get me wrong, but you look at the Dallas Cowboys, like I said, nobody has more wins in the NFC over the last, 6, 7 seasons. He's got to be doing something, right? He has to know what he's doing, but then again, he doesn't have Super Bowls, and that's the ultimate measuring stick whenever you're talking about franchise.
Or NFC championship game. He hasn't gotten to that point yet either, I'm going to stick with Jerry Jones as wrecking his team. I understand that, and I know those numbers are hard to ignore, but I mean, Jerry Jones is...
I'll wait another year. I mean, seeing what they're seeing yesterday, the New York Giants was everybody's pick to go to the Super Bowl in the NFC. They went to their house, and you saw what that team that Jerry Jones has put together is capable of doing. I wouldn't say he wrecked if he wrecked the franchise by anything, it's by keeping Wade Phillips on as long as he did. with hearing some of the things that, I mean, they were going through, so.
I'll go down the middle and say circling the drain.
Circling the drain.
Right now, they're headed there, but I don't think they're quite there as a.
By the way, could Minnesota be just like Dallas, a team that the Packers, faced and kind of quit? Well, I think we all agree that that's not going to happen this week. Could happen down the road. Teams with 2 losses, Atlanta. Teams with 3 losses, New Orleans, Tampa Bay, the Giants, Philadelphia, Chicago, and Green Bay. Teams with 4 losses, Seattle, Washington, St. Louis is 4 and 5. So there's a lot of traffic in front of the Vikings right now.
It's a lot of traffic in front of everybody right now, and right next to everybody.
I mean, it used to be this NFC's 4 or 5 weeks ago. Nobody knew what was going to happen with this thing. Everybody was wondering, talking about how bad the football was in the NFC. The picture's starting to become a little more clear, and the cream is starting to rise to the top.
I'm not convinced of that based just on the Giants game last night. I mean, I don't. This whole thing could go in 2 weeks again. You know, I mean,
you don't think
if the Packers lose their next 2 games on the road, everyone's going to be down on them. Let's fire Mike, get rid of Ted, burn the house down, start over. I mean,
and these are 2 games that they can lose. I mean, we saw what Atlanta, or some of us saw what Atlanta did to Baltimore on Thursday night. Some of us saw it for other reasons, but. Minnesota, it's still Minnesota. It's still that game. I still think in the back of your head, it's kind of a shaky game going into the Metrodome.
I gotta be honest with you. I think they could have a tougher time in Atlanta. I know they're gonna have a real tough time in New England, but I just don't see them. I think I see the Viking game Sunday as a Packers. They will pull away and will win convincingly.
I look at it like this. Last Minnesota game, there wasn't a lot of people giving the Packers a chance. They went in there and won. The New York Jets game, nobody gave them a chance, and they went in that game and won. So now, with Green Bay going to Minnesota and kind of not saying it's overlooking, but feeling like Green Bay's going to go in there and get the job done and do it handily, those are the games that start scaring you.
Yeah, I understand that, but Brad Childress is involved.
Very good.
he's involved, but the players are involved too, and I think the players can rise above the coach when needed.
Yeah, well, we'll see what happens this week. The Vikings and Packers. We'll talk more about that matchup, and we'll continue here from the fifth quarter in Little Chute. Mike Woods from the Appleton Post-Crescent, along with Justin Hull. I'm Bill Scott. Back with more of this on the Woodward Radio Network.
Now back to In the Huddle with Bill Scott and Green Bay offensive lineman TJ Lay.
And we're back in the fifth quarter in Little Chute. Our transportation provided each and every Monday night by L&S Classic Limousine Service. Personal professional service for all occasions. Call 800-830-5933 for your reservations. We had no players to transport tonight, but Lenny, being the trooper that he is, he's here with us again tonight. L&S Classic Limousine. Lenny, thank you for everything you do. He's got his biker leather jacket.
I know. I asked him if he came in on the Hog, but he said no, he didn't. It was still in your eyes. So.
All right. Packers return to practice today from their bye week. Last Friday, they put Mark Tauscher on season-ending IR, and that was one where I think they really were hoping that he'd be able to make it back. If anything, just as a true backup, Belaga really is probably done enough to warrant keeping that job anyway, but I know they would have liked his experience, so much so that they want him around. They're going to have him take flights, travel on the road. They want Tauscher and his experience to be with the team.
Well, he's a good veteran presence, he's a great locker room guy, and obviously we all know if anything goes awry or they need some words to be said, he's not afraid to do it. Mm-hmm. He'll step up and get the job done for him. So, wise decision, I'd say.
Yeah, he is expected to have shoulder surgery tomorrow, so I'm not sure if he's going to make this trip or not, or if he'll be able to. I don't know what his recovery is. If he can take a little air pocket or two, on the flight to Minnesota. But anyway, Brian Belaga, is he going to be good enough at right tackle? I think he's done enough.
I think he's done enough so far. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. He's not killing him, that's for sure.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's why they made the move. I remember a few weeks back, I'm trying to think, it was right around the chiller, who went on the IR. Somebody else went on the IR that week. They were talking that Tauscher maybe a month back that they could have placed him on the IR. that kind of got laid, to the backside, and then we kind of saw questionable. Bulaga's been in there doing the job, and I think they realized that, well, we keep him around, the presence, we can still pay him, that sort of thing, but we need to move on. We're fine with Bulaga.
I don't know that I've seen a young player play that prominent of a position and be so, A, good, but B, just calm, collective. He's a smart guy, he's articulate, I mean, he says all the right things. And you just kind of get the impression when you talk to him, he's really not blowing smoke back at you. I mean, he's a real heads-up guy.
Yeah, I mean, maybe you're surprised because of all the offensive linemen that Thompson has drafted over the past few years. They've all seemed to be taking 2 to 3 years to get it before it clicks. But I mean, I'm sure Joe Thomas was the same way in Cleveland last year. Went in, started right away, played great, obviously. And some guys get it, some guys are smart, and maybe they also have something to do why he's a first-round draft pick, and other guys are 3rd and 4th round picks.
Yeah, no question about it.
I think what you're seeing from Bulaga, you go back to the draft, I mean, there were the Trent Williams, the guy that went to the Redskins, and there was 3 or 4 offensive linemen taken before Bulaga, and I remember once the college season was over, Bulaga was right there either as the 1 or 2 offensive lineman. He's the solid, he's the, I don't want to say the safe pick, but he's the guy that's going to be a starter. Then all these other guys, the upside. Then he ends up falling to the Packers at 24. You take the safe, solid guy there, and that's what Bulaga has been for him. He's been a safe guy to put in there, and he's been very, very solid through his 5 or 6 games, whatever he started for Tauscher, and I think that's what you expected with him, too. I remember hearing that there was the feeling that Thompson was looking even to trade up to get Bulaga in the 1st round because that's how much they coveted, and just kind of lucked into a situation where he fell to them. And now, whether it's on the right side or the left side, it looks like the Packers have a staple on that offensive line for years to come.
Yeah, Clifton's really played well in the last 4 or 5 weeks. In the first 3 or 4 weeks, a lot of us, myself included, were ready to toss the guy out the window because he was really bad. I mean, he was getting beat routinely, and he's been made a complete about face, and it's just been rock solid ever since.
And this will make it interesting because a lot of people thought this was going to be his last year, that the injuries would have just caught up to him and been too much to put up with. And, he's playing this well. Then if he comes back next year, you got Bulaga there, then they don't have to draft another tackle next year. Obviously, if Clifton steps away, then you have to draft someone again. So whether or not he comes back is going to affect how they draft this year.
Yeah, I get the feeling if he has a good, if he continues to be strong the rest of the way, and feels like, maybe there's another year left in the tank that he'll come back. I don't know that if he finishes strong, he walks away.
I think contracts too in the NFL is something to look at. He got a 3-year deal. Tauscher got a 2-year deal in free agency this past year, so maybe knock off the final year, but you have to think the Packers really felt like they could get this year and another year out of Clifton when all is said and done. Where Tauscher, maybe another year by giving him a 2-year deal and see what happens there.
I have a feeling Tauscher's done.
Yeah, I think he's done too.
Yeah. All right, just a reminder, the Granite Peak Ski Area email segment, normally next segment, where we take your emails and get a chance to ask a question. We've got a $400 ski package to a Granite Peak up in the Wausau area. Ordinarily, we would have that segment on with players, but we will not have that segment this week. But we do encourage you to not forget that email address, inthehuddleshow.com. Inthehuddleshow.com. You can email your questions for next week, and we'll know who our player guests are a little bit later on in the week, and then we'll give you an opportunity once again to come up a winner. James Starks, he was a guy that I thought everybody really thought this guy was headed for season-ending injured reserve. Just didn't have enough time. They've got really nothing to judge him off of. He missed his entire senior year of college. Then he missed, pretty much. He got hurt in pre-training camp drills, tore his hamstring. Took an entire training camp, entire 6 weeks in the PUP to get back. But now he's back, and they really think, in some way, shape, or form, that he can help them.
Yeah, obviously, if I put him on the roster, they do. It's kind of odd for me because I really don't understand why people are in love with a guy that really don't know if he can even play.
Yeah.
And seems to, at least even at this point, seems to be a couple weeks out from possibly doing making any meaningful contributions. So I'll be interested to see if he even hits the field this year. I'm just not seeing it. I don't know how he fits in. Really.
Well, you know what his addition to the active roster means. Obviously, they wouldn't put him on the active roster if they didn't have some plan for him. But in a 53-man roster, you are now eating up 6 average running backs and 4 average tight ends. I mean, Finley's on IR now. So everybody behind him was just, average, probably average at best. Corliss has the most upside, but you're eating up 10 roster spots for 2 positions, and there really isn't any marquee players at any one of those 2 spots.
I'm not Ted Thompson, so God, I don't know what he's thinking. We question what he's thinking all the time. So, but you're right. It seems like a luxury that shouldn't even be considered. And again, I don't see what it is with Starks. I don't, let's see him play some exhibition games and see if he can do anything. I mean, I'm still mystified and I agree with you. They probably think they're going to get something out of him, but I have no idea what that is right now.
It's kind of where I'm at with it too. I mean, I think, and it's a terrible explanation, but it's the only one that I can come up with in my head, is they want to see what, he can do at practice. You put him on IR, you can't see what he can do for practice.
I asked that question to Mike McCarthy today, though, and he shot me right down almost as fast as I get the words out. He said it is not the time to take a look at anybody. He has to be ready to step in and play. That's what I was told. So he would have shot you down as fast as he shot me down.
Like I said, it's the first thought that came to my head. It's not logical. Yeah. Like McCarthy said, we have 53 roster spots. You know how valuable they are, but you got to think there's part of them that are looking to see if they have anything with this guy. If they do, down the future, need to make moves. It's one thing that we as fans and media members kind of forget. They're not only trying to build the 2010 Green Bay Packers, but they also have the 2011, 2012, 2013 Green Bay Packers in their minds, whether it's Ted Thompson or Mike McCarthy. So, I don't know. How much does McCarthy say, though, that we actually sit there and believe he's telling us 100% honestly?
But who knows? It may not work out in 2 weeks. He may all of a sudden decide to put his T-shirt on and hurt his shoulder, and there he goes back to IR again. So that's all a possibility.
Somebody needs to give him a hug. Who knows?
We'll come back, and we're talking more Packers here on this Monday night after this on the Woodward Radio Network.
Now back to In the Huddle with Bill Scott and Green Bay offensive lineman TJ Lay.
And we are back here in the fifth quarter. TJ has the night off. He'll be back with us again next Monday. We're joined by Mike Woods from the Appleton Post-Crescent and, of course, Justin Hull here each and every week.
Thanks, Lenny. Appreciate that.
This would be our email segment, but again, we'll push that off to next week and give you an opportunity to win that $400 plus ski package from Granite Peak. We'll do that next week. 7 games left. A lot of football will be played. As it stands now, are you ready to say that the Packers can compete for the NFC Championship and represent the NFC in the Super Bowl, or is it a little too early at this point?
Oh, it's too early. Well, we'll find out. I can give you an answer in 5 weeks after they play 4 of those on the road against a pretty good competition. But as it stands right today, they have as good a chance as anybody.
Yeah, I would answer that. Yes, they can, but so can the New York Giants, the Philadelphia Eagles, the Chicago Bears. As much as people have buried them, they looked pretty impressive yesterday. The New York Giants still can, despite, I think I already said that, but Atlanta, New Orleans. You can throw on a hodgepodge of teams. More than half the teams in the NFC have an opportunity to compete. I wouldn't cut off the San Francisco 49ers either. 2-6 start. They're 3-6. They're 2 games out of their division lead.
Well, they better win their division.
Yeah. But once they win their division with the players they have and the momentum that they would have going into the playoffs, they're a team that could, if they win their division, they'll get a home game in the playoffs. So, about 8 or 9 teams you can still count in.
Yeah. There are that many teams that technically are still in it, all the way down to, Seattle with a 4-5 record?
Seattle's 5-4.
5-4, somebody has 1.
Leader in that division. St. Louis is 4-5.
Yeah, that's it, St. Louis, yeah.
I said 5 weeks, but truth be told, we sit here 5 weeks and essentially the same scenario could be before us with but about 8 teams.
Yeah, well, you think somehow that the Bears are going to, I mean, their schedule gets a little tougher. Are they somehow going to magically find a way to still compete for the division?
I think Jay Cutler is magically going to take them down.
Yeah.
So I think he'll screw it up.
Is it Jay Cutler or a combination of Jay Cutler and Mike Martz?
I don't know. Did you see the interception he threw in the end zone yesterday?
Yeah, I did.
That's Jay Cutler.
Yeah. But I also saw, although I saw the Bears run the ball a little bit more yesterday, but I also see a football team that has 2 quality running backs and refuses to play the run game. In a city like Chicago, where you're playing cold, windy weather, you know, I don't get it.
Well, that's Mike Martz. That's him. I mean, that's, you know, he loves to throw the ball, et cetera, et cetera.
So knowing you've got a quarterback, though, that has a tendency to make some poor choices once in a while, you think you know, as an offensive coordinator, I mean, it behooves him to do well, too. Although
I think his ego is such that he believes he can teach him to do what he believes he should do.
Good luck with that.
But I mean, you know, as the Vikings showed yesterday, as long as you keep continuing to kick the ball to Devin Hester, the Bears are going to be in it.
I said this last week leading up to that game because it was kind of an interesting debate. Who did you want to see win that game? Was it Minnesota or was it Chicago? Everyone's saying you want to see Chicago, you want to see the Vikings get buried. I don't think you want to be even with the team. Remember, Chicago beat Green Bay once already. You could come down to that final week of the season, just throw out the scenario. Green Bay's 10-5, Chicago is 9-6. Chicago wins that game. Who knows? It's snowy, you know, different variables. All of a sudden, Chicago wins that game. They take the tiebreaker. They take the division. Green Bay has to go on the road 3 times, play 3 games in the playoffs versus possibly 10-6 could get you a home game, could get you a first round bye. Things are. You can't count out Chicago. Everyone's saying, you know, the offense, this.
I don't think anybody was, well, I can't speak for other people. I said the same thing. I'm not counting out Chicago, but I do think, though, that given their schedule in the second half, and the fact that Brett Favre has been there before, and the Vikings have a tremendous amount of talent, that I would rather see the Bears win and bury and get the Vikings completely out of the picture, and then we'll worry about the next game.
Chicago's done it before. Chicago did it when they made it to the Super Bowl back in the 2006 season when they went 13-3, and everybody's just sitting there, oh, it's Chicago, they're going to fade, they're going to fade, they're going to fade. They did it the exact same way they're doing it this year with a very good rush defense, enough secondary help to get the job done, and when the offense needs to step up at times, they've been stepping up and they've been getting the big special teams plays once again from Devin Hester. So I'm not saying Chicago's going to be there in the end, but I think everyone is putting Chicago on the back burner just a little bit too early with 7 games left, and they're dead even with the Packers.
I don't know if that's what people are doing. I just think that they're confident that, well, maybe they are doing it to a certain extent, but I think people are confident that the Bears are going to trip over themselves on their way to the end of the season, and that the Packers win. But even though I think the Vikings are more washed up than the Bears, and I thought that even before the Vikings and Bears played and a winner was determined, I think the Vikings are a train wreck right now.
Minnesota's the team that historically buries themselves. Chicago, they bury themselves early. They're not the team that, if they're having a good season, they've been able to ride. We haven't seen that late season collapse from Chicago over the years like we have with Minnesota many times.
I think when people see the Bears, though, as they look at them today, they say, well, they should have lost the Lions game, which they should have. The Packers obviously should have beat them before they shot themselves in the foot 15 different ways. So they're probably looking at the Bears saying, well, they're closer, you know, much closer to 4-4 or 5-4 than they are 6-3.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know,
you know what? You can do that with any team. Green Bay should have lost to the Detroit game. That puts them at 5-4. You could probably make an argument that they should have lost the Jets game too, only putting 9 points up on the board. So
I don't
looking at that. I mean,
they won the Jets game.
You can statistics, records, and that. I mean, you can go back and make anything look the way you want it.
Yeah, but not in the Jets game, though.
And
shut them out, for goodness sakes.
And it was an errant call by the referee that cost them the
Lions lost the Viking game. Shante Shenko touchdown.
Yeah, that one there, but not the Jets game.
Okay,
we got to take a break. I'll let you have your say when we come back. All right, we're going to take a break. Come back. Final segment. Boy, it's going quickly. Back with more after this on the Woodward Radio Network.
Now, back to In the Huddle with Bill Scott and Green Bay offensive lineman TJ Lay.
And we're back here at the fifth quarter, our final segment. TJ has the night off. He'll be back with us again next Monday after the Packers take on the Vikings, joined by Justin Hull and Mike Woods from the Appleton Post-Crescent. What areas of this football team, area or areas, if any, would concern you right now?
Receiving game? I mean, you look at James Jones has been inconsistent. Jordy Nelson, he's been okay. You lost your Michael Finley. Donald Driver has been injured. Greg Jennings, I mean, he's been coming on of late. But the weapons that everyone perceived them having going into the season just aren't there. Yes, they lit up Dallas for, what was it, 35 offensive points, but are they going to be able to do that every single week? And I think that's what concerns me, is the weapons surrounding Aaron Rodgers and that passing game, even though it might have the most upside, but it's also the thing that I think worries me the most, because that was the train they were supposed to ride to all these expectations that they had.
Mike?
I'm going to go with my old standby, the special teams. You know, they played well the last couple of weeks, but, you know, Tim Mistay has been up and down. You know, they're going to try out Shields, probably, I would imagine, at kickoff. Still not, you know, they still take a certain degree of risk with Tramon Williams returning punts. Their coverage units have been hot and cold. You know, it's just every week you don't know what you're going to get out of those guys, and that's, if I'm a fan, that's what concerns me, because I just don't know.
I would agree. That's what I would have said. I think special teams is a big concern. I think they gave up too many long returns, potentially busting them. There have been a lot of I don't have the number, but there have been a lot of kickoff returns for touchdowns, punt returns for touchdowns, and from a kickoff return standpoint with the Packers, just, you know, for as many as there have been in the league this year, the Packers are not one of those teams that's threatening for that.
It seems like every big play they make on offense has been counteracted by a big return, whether it's starting across the 40-yard line and with a very good field position, or Mason Crosby kicking it out of bounds, as he has, I think, once every single game this year. Yeah, that's another good concern.
3 of the next 4 in domes, 4 of the next 5 on the road, so we'll find out if there's going to be, you know, a real issue with this football team in terms of their ability to either A, win the division, or B, you know, how many home games they're going to get in the playoffs. I think personally, I think they would really have to fall flat on their face to not make the playoffs. But what position they have in the playoffs is probably the question.
I think I hear what you're saying, but also because everything is as bunched up as it is, I don't think they're that far away from not qualifying either. I mean, you know, if mediocrity continues to persist and we end up with a bunch of 10-6, 9-7 teams, and there are going to be tiebreakers all over the place, so, you know, obviously they would do themselves much better to win 11, 12 games, but not sure if they can get there.
I would say this in addition to, in our last question, that I'm not totally out of the woods on the offense yet either. I mean, they put up a lot of yards and a lot of points against a bad Dallas team that quit. And prior to that, what have they done? You know,
not a lot.
They've struggled. So I don't know that, you know, you have a big offensive performance against a team that quit, and then you take a week off. So any momentum you had going anyway, it kind of comes to a grinding halt. I'm not saying that they're not going to, you know, come out of the gates firing bullets and playing well, but I don't know that it's a given that they're going to either.
There's 2 games on the schedule that Minnesota, yes, it's an important game. You know, Chicago at the end of the year, that could end up being an important game. But there's 2 games that I really look at Atlanta and then at home against the New York Giants. When you get into a jumbled mess like this, those are the games that could be the tiebreaker games. So those are the games that could be that much more important than the other ones. I would almost venture to say the Atlanta game's almost more important than Minnesota in that sense. You want to bury the Vikings, but they could find themselves hurting more from a loss to Atlanta down the road than they would hurting from a loss against the Minnesota Vikings.
All right, take Clay Matthews out of the defense. Who's your most valuable defender other than Clay Matthews? Because we'd all say Clay Matthews, so who's next?
Easy for me, Tramon Williams.
Yeah.
Because you just did not know if he would be able to play, how well he'd be able to play. He's not only played adequately, he's played at a level way above what anyone ever could have expected. So.
I think he's been their best defensive back.
Oh, absolutely.
He's been better than Woodson.
Yes, yes, he really has.
There's no disagreement on that.
Take out Aaron Rodgers from the offense. Flip side, who's number one in offense?
Jack Clifton?
Well, I was going to go to the other side, Beluga, because you're asking a rookie to, you know, who obviously is lacking in anything. He lacks experience, and asking him, you know, to go out there and do the job. And yes, he's a number one pick, but that always doesn't mean a whole lot. He's done it. I mean, he's been someone they can roll out there and not have to worry about. So.
Yeah. I think that you can almost pick out anybody on an offensive line. I thought Sitten has been outstanding. You hardly ever hear his name, and when that happens on a television broadcast, it means you're doing something right. I'm going to take the leader of that group, the guy right in the middle of snaps of football. I think Scott Wells has had probably his best season right now.
I think we better mention Darren College too, just because of the year that he's having, a guy that everybody was ready to throw in front of a train last year. And he mentioned it at the beginning of the season. I think everybody kind of pointed to it. One position to worry about. He was worried about left tackle. He was the backup left tackle, the backup right tackle, the backup right guard.
Yeah.
So he was being moved around. He's been at one position, stayed there, got comfortable there, and I think we saw the benefit of that.
They knew they messed that up last year.
Yeah.
They designed it to make sure that doesn't happen again this year. Good point. Mike, thanks for coming on the program.
Thanks for having me.
We'll do it again next year. Mike Woods from the Apple and Post President, Justin Hall, thanks for pinch hitting again for us. TJ will be back with us again next Monday right here on the Woodward Radio Network. So long, everybody.